So last video we looked at string variables in particular and talked about variables in general. So today we're going to look at number type variables. So there's mainly there's several types of numbers, but I guess the two main ones are integers, plus and minus whole numbers, so -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're covering both negative and positive numbers there. And also there's decimal numbers. Sometimes these decimal point numbers may be represented by what they call a floating point. You may have heard that before. So you've got basically decimal numbers and integers. So whole numbers and then decimal numbers. So we're going to have a look at the number data type next. Before we go on though, I just want to talk about our variable naming. So we have a look at myString, which we covered last lesson. You can see how we've named myString. So there's two words there. You've got my, and then you've got string. Notice that the my is lowercase m, and then the string is a capital S. So, and then we've stuck the two words together with no spaces, and certainly not allowed any spaces between variable names. It is a big no-no. Doesn't work. You could put an underscore though. That's quite common. But however, the way we want to do it is we want to follow the convention of camel case. So camel case is, as you see, you imagine the S is the hump here. So you've got my, and then you've got the camel's hump, and then you've got string, so capital S. So we have another variable, so they're my favorite number. We would type it like this. So you've got the humps for the next word. So it makes it easier to read without putting in spaces and underscores, etc. So this is what we call camel case. Okay, so I'll just delete that one. The other thing is, for your variable names, you're not allowed to use flash keywords, also known as reserved words. So a reserved word would be, for example, import, package, class, extends, public. So basically any of these words that Flash uses as part of its language, you shouldn't use those in your variable names. So for instance, this would be bad. Their trace or their class. Their class is a string. Okay, so yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. Probably won't work. Even if it does work, very bad convention to use. Okay, so we'll move on to numbers. Actually, one more thing, indentation. So by default, Flash, when you press tab, Flash will add 4 spaces. So a tab is the equivalent of 4 spaces. And you want to be indenting your code like it's done automatically for you when we create the class, but also in our own coding. You can see we've got about 4 spaces there, 4 spaces. Very important to use indentation because it makes the code a lot easier to follow and to read. So make sure you're indenting. Very important. Okay, so that is about it. The only other thing is, yeah, you want to have meaningful names. So this probably isn't a really good example. myString, that's actually the opposite of what you should be doing. You want to use meaningful names. So maybe instead of myString, I could have had their greeting, perhaps. And then I could have had hi, or maybe I started off with hello, then I changed my mind, and we're just going to say hi. Okay, so yeah, meaningful names, not like some of the examples I've given so far. Okay, so we'll just delete the string variables. You can refer back to the previous video if you want to have a look at that again. So we're looking at number variables. So I do recommend you just use a number. There is an integer variable type, but number covers both integers and decimal points, as I was saying before. Okay, so let's say var, of course, my number. Again, not a very meaningful name, but just for an example. And we'll make it number. So capital N for number. So we've got there, my number, colon, number. And we won't assign a value to it just now, but on the next line we'll do that. So we'll say my number equals 10. Oops. Okay. And yeah, let's do some maths just to make sure it all works. A trace statement because we'll want some output. So my number plus 10. So we're going to add 10 to my number, which is also 10. So we should get 20. And let's do that. Let's save that. Save everything. File, save all. And run that. Okay, 20 in our output is what we expected. Okay, so that's a number type. So you just declare it as a number. So Boolean variables. Next. So a Boolean variable is basically it can contain one of two values, either true or false. So there's my number. We'll say, instead of my number, we'll say my Boolean with capital B. And so there, my Boolean. Copy and pasting just to save time. And we'll set it to true. And let's just say trace my Boolean. And let's just run that and see what happens. Okay, true. So it's given you just the value of whatever my Boolean is. So Booleans are quite simple, but they're used much more often than you might imagine. They're basically to control the state of your program. So we'll have a better look at Booleans when we look at if statements and switch statements. They are very useful. Integer. There, my integer, whoops, is an int type. So int for integer equals, so very important, it's an integer type, so no decimal numbers. So, oops, let's change it to 42. Okay, trace my integer. Okay, run that, or first save and then run that. Okay, 42, it's just playing 42. And you can do any sort of maths you want on that, so as well. So 10, 42 plus 10. By the way, this is called an expression, just basically doing some maths. But not all expressions are mathematical. There are many other different types of expressions in ActionScript. 52, okay. So final thing we've covered so far, well, we did strings in previous video. We've done number types, we've done Boolean types, we've done integer types now. We're going to have a look at constants. So the thing with a variable is given the name, you can actually change its value. So we've set it to 42 here. We could change it to 60 if we wanted to. And it allows you to change, file save, it allows you to change the value at any point. So we initially set it to my integer to 42, my integer to 60, and we can change the value as often as we want. Now, with a constant, we can't. So let's change VAR for variable. Let's change that to CONST. So that stands for constant. Now, we should get an error because we're trying to change 42 to 60 and then add 10 to it and display it. Okay, so there we go. Now, so we have an error message, illegal assignment to a variable specified as constant. Okay, so that's what we expected, and no issues there. So we do use, we don't use constants nearly as much as variables. However, they are useful when you want to guarantee that a value is not going to change. So you can't accidentally change it in code, or someone else can't accidentally change the value of a certain constant in your code. So that's the reason for constants.